The Austin Healey 100 was first debuted at the London Motor Show in 1952, boasting breathtaking bodywork and a top speed of over 100 miles per hour. It quickly gained a lot of attention. Between 1953 and 1956, nearly 15,000 were produced in the Longbridge plant in Birmingham. By the mid-70s, Graham Foster had found one of the first production cars buried in a barn along the south coast of England.
In 1976, I found myself building an Austin Healey 100, which was very short of parts. I discovered through a friend in Wiltshire that there was a farmer who'd given up breeding cows and had started collecting cars. And he'd seen some Healey parts in one of the cow pens. So we went up there, and sure enough, there were 4 decent looking wings, which I needed, and quite a few other bits and pieces. I negotiated then to buy everything the farmer had for a very reasonable price, and took the whole thing away and took it to my workshop, realised that the car was in better shape overall, or the parts were in better shape overall than the parts that I had. So I started to rebuild this car instead of adding to the other one. During the rebuild, I met a man called John Wheatley from the Austin Healey Club in the Midlands, and he was also a 100 owner, and he became a great resource for technical details about rebuilding my 100, invaluable. He also told me about an event which was coming up that year, which was the Austin Healey Club International Healey Weekend in Bewley in Hampshire at the Motor Museum, which was very close to where we lived. We went along. I then met a chap called Mike Pragnell, and I joined, through him I joined the club, and there began 25 plus years of involvement in the Austin Healey Club of Great Britain. The involvement I had with the Healey Club in the New Forest Centre grew as we generated a lot of enthusiasm in our members to go and attend the events such as Healey Club racing, hill climb events, auto tests, and lots of people started to take part in this. So we became a very active centre. We had camping weekends. We'd always attend the International Healey Weekend with our own New Forest Centre flag, and we'd perform in front of audiences our own hammer dance, which became stuff of legend. I then started a meeting in our local pub in the New Forest, in a very pretty village, and people would come from some of the other centres to our meetings on the second Friday of every month. And that meeting actually ran, it was one of the longest running, I think it ran for 21 years. The New Forest Centre then gained quite a reputation for having a fun membership. We actually encouraged activity to the extent where we would take 15 or 20 cars, all Healeys, to various events around the country which were being organised by other centres of the Healey Club. International Healey Weekend was always a great bun fight. We would all enter the auto tests and any competitions we could, and we generally came home with a few trophies. We had some very good drivers in the club. In 1984, Bradley, my son, was born. I asked to collect him from the hospital in the Healey. They took one look at it and said no. So I had to collect him in our road car, which was the Saab 99 Turbo. So at a few days old, he managed 100 miles an hour on the way home. We then became part of the family section of the Healey Club with lots of other people with young children then, because it was quite a much younger group. Activities were always based around what the kids were doing. So we had some great kids parties as well. The family car was the Healey. One thing that wasn't a family event was the Le Mans race, which was held in France, the 24-hour race. I decided that we should all go, so I arranged everything for the weekend, and we took about 19 cars in 1987, and we had a Le Mans raid, which was the first of 3 that we did, which was a huge amount of fun, as you can imagine. We would all be camping together and drinking and dining, and it was legendary to be there. In 1989, the second event was extra special because Jaguar actually won Le Mans again since 1960. And we were lauded through France, driving through in our Austin Healeys with all the French cheering, shouting, "Jaguar, Jaguar!" Some of the guys that came with us on the Mont raids were involved in the racing in the Austin Healey Club in England, and I was convinced that I should have a go at it in my car. The car was a little bit tuned and fairly quick, so I thought I'd have a go. So in '91 I thought I'd do the Club Race Championship, which was a really interesting year. Great fun, great camaraderie and lots of support. But I decided after a few races that I really couldn't damage my car like I'd seen some of the cars get damaged, and so I stopped racing. I thought that was enough. I had a little go, and it was great fun going to all the meetings, and it was the thing that I got out of my system. One of the races that we were invited to as the Healey Club of Great Britain was the race at Montlhéry near Paris. I wasn't entered, but all the faster boys were invited by the French club to compete. And we took a usual crowd of good fun guys from the New Forest Centre and had an absolute riotous weekend. And we all got to go, or some of us got to go on the banked circuit, which took some doing. Another one of the New Forest Centre invitational weekends was from Bristol. We had an invitation from John Chatham, Joe Cox, etc., and the racing boys to a celebration end of summer weekend, usually held in October, to the Isle of Wight, where we'd have a competition against the Isle of Wight Car Club, who would turn up in all kinds of strange machines, V8 sandrails and turbocharged minis and things. Those weekends became legendary because they were basically drinking weekends with a little racing thrown in on the Saturday and the Sunday. Some of the events were held on a go-kart circuit, but the Sunday morning was generally up the hotel drive, which was always covered in wet leaves, so there were a lot of slips. Another time we were at Bembridge Airport, where we would be racing up and down the runway, and every now and then we'd have to stop the racing, move the cones so a plane could land. At one of our local meetings held at the East End Arms, a friend of mine from Hayling Island had a new BMW and he wanted to show it. So he came up and said, "Oh, I'll drive, we'll go in the BM." And I said, "Nice car, but it's a Healey meeting, we should take the Healey." And he said, "No problem, I'll drive back." Okay, so we did the usual Healey thing, had a great night. Roy drove back, and on the way back, he was completely sober. On the way back, the car slithered into a ditch. Complete surprise. We were doing 30 miles an hour, just one of the camber problems of the roads in the New Forest. Well, I took the car home and had a good look at it in the morning, realised that it needed some serious work. So that was the beginning of the second rebuild in 1997. Roy, of course, as you can imagine, was very upset that he'd done this to my lovely old car. And he said, "Look, get it fixed." And he sent, Monday, I think I got a cheque through the post. He said, "Just tell me what you need." I thought this was very honourable of him. He's a good friend. But I contacted the insurance company and they said, "Yes, okay, we can cover this." I had a couple of quotes and I suggested I could do it myself. And they said, "Yes, okay, we'll give you a go ahead. We have to send around an inspector." However, on the Saturday, a friend of mine had phoned up and said, "How's the car? It's a bit of a mess." And he said, "All right, I'm free on Sunday and Saturday. Should we strip it?" Okay, great. Richard Wright, thank you very much. He came over early Saturday morning. We stripped the car and had it in 1,000 pieces by Sunday afternoon. And I hoisted the chassis up into the roof of my factory, and it just hung up there while we carried on with work. A few days later, the insurance guy came around and said, "Oh, I've come to inspect the car." I said, "Oh, just walk past it." "Really?" He looked out of the office window. "I can't see it." I said, "Look, it's up there in the roof." "Oh, you've started." "Well, we've got a bit more than that." He said, "That's okay, let's go with this." So he gave us the authority, and I rebuilt the car from top to bottom. And I put the car back together. The engine gearbox were okay, and she was back on the road in rebuilt condition again. Alongside my passion for the Healey is another passion for sailing. This actually lessened my involvement with the Healey Club in general, but we still did activities with them and enjoyed sailing the boat. Before Pauline and I were married, we came on holiday to a place called Lacca in Corfu, and were thoroughly impressed and really enjoyed Greece. And we questioned one day whether we might come and live in Greece when we were older. Bear in mind, we weren't even married then. We still argue over who said that. We kept that dream alive for many, many years, kept putting money away because we really knew we were going to do it. I intended to retire early and have a sailing life in Greece. Then in 2006, I came to live in Kefalonia, and I then nipped back and got the boat and took the next 2 months sailing her down from England, which was a whole series of stories in itself. So we'd moved to Greece, and we'd been here about a year, and there was something drastically missing in our lives, and the fact that the Healey was still in England was it. I had a phone call from a friend one day in England who was a delivery driver for classic cars throughout Europe, and he said, "Would you like your Healey in Venice on Saturday?" I said, "Fantastic, I'd love it. I can get up there on a ferry, no problem." Okay, so we did the deal. He arrived, I got a ferry up to Venice and brought him back, and he said the cost of delivering it to Venice was to go sailing for a week in Greek waters. So that was a deal I couldn't resist. So the car came over to Greece, we went sailing for a week, and the deal was done. So living in Greece with the Healey is different from living in England with it. It's a lot hotter, so the cooling system had to be really in good shape, and it is. I've done a few modifications to keep it cool. We have various classic car enthusiasts in this part of Greece, and all over Greece there are classic car enthusiasts. So there are lots of meetings held, visits to different islands. There's a strong VW following here. So there's a bit of activity in the classic car scene, which I enjoy and get involved in. Not in an organisational way, but just pure enjoyment. But the roads in Greece are pretty much empty away from Athens, and the driving is exceptional. It's as good as the Italian and French Riviera, but without the traffic. Owning an Austin Healey has meant to me a wonderful connection to a brotherhood of enthusiasts which are all around the world. And we've made some wonderful friends and still have them. And some of my best, oldest friends are from the early days in the Healey Club. They still own Healeys, or if they don't, they're still good friends. I must express my gratitude to Donald Healey for creating this beautiful car, which has been such an influence on my life. And I had the great fortune last year to be in Florida, where I was introduced to Jerry Coker, who laid the design out on paper. He designed the Austin Healey 100. I had lunch with him. That was a coup. After 45 years of owning NUE, I can't imagine what life might have been like without it.